So I want this. I've got a presentation for this portion of it and some really kind of fun statistics, but I would like to have this more as a discussion as well. So we'll get into this, talk about some best practices. I know some of you in here have some experience with service contracts, with charging reoccurring revenue. You know, there's plenty of market for everyone. So if you feel comfortable sharing some of your best practices and what you do, please do so. I think it'll be very advantageous in increasing everybody's bottom line and working with your customers. It's a slam dunk. You already know we're a Salt Lake-based company. Everything is developed here, and a lot of the things are actually manufactured here. All of our enclosures are built here at 2 manufacturing facilities, powder coated here. So it's fun to go down there and chat with those guys. We've experienced some pretty rapid growth over the last year, which we're excited about. We've got, we just opened up a new production facility. A couple of you have been down there, and we do have a will call there, so instances where you need something, we can't always do it same day, but you'll just put a PO in through distribution, and if you need 10 more door controllers, and they may have on the shelf, a lot of times you can come down and will call that stuff, so that's really nice. But really the value proposition of being in Utah is just the talent that's here. Being in this whole Silicon Slopes adventure is pretty fun. So obviously companies like Domo and Adobe, Vivint, and all those guys are here, and they've been able to take advantage of that. But they've also cultivated a culture that's brought a lot of talent to Utah as well. So we take advantage of that, and that's a big deal. We always call it that we were founded in 2011. I had an integration company. That's when I sold that company off and started, really shipping the product around and got it out there. And we're one of the fastest growing companies in Utah. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with, what do they call it? Mountain West Network. That's Mountain West Capital Network. It's a fantastic event. If you haven't ever been there, go and attend that. But in 2017, we're rated at the 12th fastest growing company in Utah. They do take 5 years of audited tax returns to do that, so it's not just an easy thing to get. Of course, they want a truckload of cash as well to convince them that you're. I'm just kidding. It always makes me laugh. They're like, "Hey, do you want to apply for this prestigious award?" It's like, "Yes, okay. Well, that's $2,000." Oh, okay. I guess it's for them to audit all of your taxes, right, or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, we're 12th fastest growing company in Utah. In 2018, we were the 35th fastest growing company in Utah. As you continue to grow, it's harder and harder to keep that momentum up once as they dig into your taxes and keep that growth up there. But very, very exciting. We're also backed by a $4.5 billion organization, which is the Wasatch Group, Deloy Hansen. I'm not sure if he had showed up, but he didn't end up coming. Okay, but anyway, just a fantastic guy, and we're still privately held. So myself, Evan, our CEO, and Josh, our CTO, are the 3 private holdings of Prodatakey, but got to have a great partnership with Wasatch, and they've done some great things for us. It's a strategic partnership for us. There was a capital infusion as well, but we also have a lot of systems within the Wasatch properties. So that was a big deal. We consider ourselves one, if not the industry leader in the cloud. We're not out there just throwing that around, but we've done a lot, we feel, to try to get there, and hopefully we continue to do a lot to maintain that trust. And I want to talk about some of the companies around that provide cloud-based services. And before I pop this up, I should have probably asked you who some of those companies are. But what are a lot of the services that you guys are paying a monthly fee for right now? Spotify, right? I know I get hit with that every month. I'm like, man, why do I pay for this? Phone. What was that?
We use RingCentral.
RingCentral. And RingCentral is awesome. If you don't have a phone system, those guys are great. But yeah, I'm cutting just over $1,000 check to Ring Central every month. So every phone that I decide to plop on a desk is $50 a month, and it's just boom, plug it in, $50 a month. And so when you talk about adding a door, it's like, oh, I want a door. All right, maybe $50 isn't really that big of a deal. I don't know. It depends on the application. But the reason that I talk about this is it should be every single company that you're approaching on an access control front is paying a reoccurring revenue for something, if not a lot of something. Cisco switches, when you get into bigger organizations like the Real Stadium and those types of things, the reoccurring revenue that's being paid for services rendered or product that's involved is a big deal. So the reason that I share that is to take the edge off. Sometimes when we go in and we try to pitch a maintenance agreement, or we try to pitch a reoccurring revenue opportunity for you as an installation organization, sometimes we get a little gun shy, and it's like, oh man, I don't know. I'm not sure if they're going to do the 150 or 300 or $1,500 a month. All right, that can be a scary thing when you look at it and you're like, okay, 1 to 20 doors, maybe that's $300 or $400 a month. But people are paying it. And they're paying it every day, so that's a big deal. I've got many school districts, and we all know what kind of constraints school districts are under for budgeting purposes. But we've got a lot of school districts that we work with, and they're all paying a reoccurring revenue piece. I've got some as high as $2,400. To $4,000 a year that they're paying in reoccurring for a school and or school district. So the value proposition, which we'll talk about shortly, is what backs you up on charging that reoccurring revenue. But like we talked about, proactive support approach and those types of things should be driving that conversation. So I would suggest, go online. Maybe the conversation in here will end up with some of the best practices for maintenance agreements and those types of things. There are several ways that you can slice and dice this. But number one, first and foremost, don't be afraid of charging monthly and or yearly for the services that you render, because it's a real value proposition. We try to offer a real value proposition to you, and hopefully you can offer that to your customer as well. Okay? And like I said, they're all paying it already just for other services. Our research, about 3 years ago, we started doing a lot of research on who's driving this reoccurring piece. And for the most part, we've discovered that the end users are driving a lot of this activity, right? Ease of use, being able to access it anywhere, anytime, on any device, those types of things. They start to see the ease of use, which drives them to a cloud-based product and to pay a fee for that. One thing that was mentioned in the roundtable that I really liked, I don't remember who said it, but what was I going to say? I'm trying to remember what he said. I'll come back to it. All right, so let's talk about hosted or managed. Is there anybody in here that does managed services versus hosted? Okay.
Summit Technology manages services, and the assets themselves are in the cloud, and you have several. And so the customer doesn't have to have the in-house IT department.
That's right.
And Summit doesn't have to have physical assets. The physical assets are on the property or in the cloud controllers, and the managed service provider provides the intelligence to integrate it and operate it.
That's right, yeah. And there's a lot of value and a pretty good value proposition behind what they do, right? And the Summit technologies that he's speaking of is Wasatch's arm. Their IT arm offers IT services to a lot of the infrastructure of Wasatch. RSL and other organizations within Wasatch use their IT arm, and their IT arm are offering a myriad of services: internet, phone, security in some cases, and TV, all of that kind of stuff. And instead of charging them up front on some cases, they're charging them for initial installation, but they're wrapping a lot of that into a service agreement that they're charging monthly for.
Practically eliminates your capital cost and turns it into a monthly recurring cost.
That's
which is
right.
accounted for differently. You don't have to deal with depreciation for the most part.
And something like the stadium is going to be much more likely to recognize a reoccurring expense,
And
right,
recurring
versus a
revenue.
capital cost.
And the same with the multifamily dwellings, you've got recurring revenue. You don't want a big capital cost if your revenue is recurring.
That's right. Yeah, good point. So let's talk a little bit about the difference in hosted and managed. Obviously, Prodatakey is hosting in this case, or other services that you might use. They're hosting it on their servers, right? And in this case, we're hosting all of the service for you. We're managing all the infrastructure. My cost is fairly high for development every single month. Without sharing that number, that sometimes can reach into the 6 digits monthly on development costs that we have into the platform itself. So what that means for you is that we're continuing to develop and to support and to manage the infrastructure behind this platform. And what that provides you is the ability to go in as the hosted platform and install this thing, but we're taking care of all the back end of the platform itself. Okay, so you get done with an installation, you get on your phone, you issue the rights to your end user, and now your end user is managing the entire platform themselves, right? But you're still getting the recurring revenue. Now, a fully managed platform, and this was something that was discussed this morning, where you have the ability to now not grant that access, or maybe grant partial access to the end user and charge a premium for doing fully managed services. In other words, your end user is reaching out to you or to your monitoring center. You might set it up with them and say, hey, look, I need to add, change, delete, or manage a card, and they would take care of that, right? Or maybe the monitoring center are doing some of those basic tasks, but you're still making changes to door configuration and those types of things. So just keep in mind those two options are available to you, and we've seen it on both sides of the fence, and sometimes it's a per customer thing. One customer may make sense to do a fully managed platform. Maybe they're never on site and they just want to call you and say, hey, add this card for me. What we're seeing is a majority are still on the hosted services end of this. So we're not seeing a huge influx of managed services, but there's still a demand for that in some instances. So let's talk about the market. This was our projection just for 2017. We put a projection together on what we anticipated the fall off of the on-prem solution would be and the uptake of a cloud-based platform. And as we put this together, we anticipated that it was going to be a gradual fall off of the cloud-based platform, of the on-prem, and a gradual increase in the cloud as people kind of adopted it in the industry. But this is what we actually saw. These are actual numbers from our 2017 books showing what the numbers actually did. So yes, we did see a gradual fall off of the on-prem solution, but the cloud-based pickup was drastic. I mean, you're talking hockey stick, type growth on the cloud-based platform. So what we've seen, and this is a nationwide movement, is again end users and dealers much more apt to move to a cloud-based solution because of the value proposition behind the solution itself, which is a big deal. It really is a win-win all the way down the pipe as you start to manage your costs correctly and charge your customers appropriately. So this is really good. Any questions around this or the market?
I have one over
Please,
here.
yeah.
So just the very last statement he said is when you learn to manage your costs effectively
Yeah.
and market, what exactly are those details? What are the dangers, the sharks in the water, and what are the potential fish that you're going to be able to reel in? I mean, I don't know to what extent dealers have been willing to share with you on some of the pitfalls as well as some of the ways that they've taken advantage of the cloud service to increase their RMR.
Well, I think one thing that's always stuck around with me, and this was actually from your and I's conversation, about a year ago or so, and I share this story quite often, but it was about the gal who owned the fitness center, right, and recognizing the cost associated with an on-prem solution. Do you want to share that, or I mean, I usually just share pretty high level. But essentially what took place here, and correct me if I've got the story wrong and I can start rebooting. But essentially what it was is there was a gal who owned a fitness facility, right? And she went and had Brand X in there. It was an on-prem solution. And she had the opportunity to upgrade to Windows 10, right? Free upgrade. So what the heck? Why not update it? Went to update it, and then what happened? You guys guess? Boom.
Perfectly.
Yeah, we're flawlessly. It stopped working. So yeah, Myron and his team, went to start consulting with them on this and realized what cost it was going to be, because the new software that worked with Windows 10 didn't work with what? The hardware that was out in there. So what they ended up having to do was do a replacement, right? Yeah. And after calculating, what was it, $5,000?
Well, yeah, so 2 days worth of work from my technicians being on site, trying to make what was their work, and then finally deciding, oh, it needs to be replaced because we're just not going to, after being on with tech support all day. And so a whole nother day's worth of labor, and the cost of the software upgrade was, a good $5,000 hit to the customer that was totally unexpected, not in their budget. It was just because of the Windows 10 play.
And what did we calculate based on a cloud, if she would have been on cloud and paid those cloud fees for those years?
It's like 7 or 8 years
Yeah.
worth of cloud service, and that's considering, nothing went wrong with any of the updates that would happen in between.
Yeah.
We'll talk about being behind on updates. One of my clients is still using Windows XP because it's the only thing that'll operate the doors.
Right. That's right.
Well, and the other thing that you factor in there is every single person that was utilizing access control was unable to use it for 2 days, so her business essentially came to a standstill, or she had to have somebody at the door hand letting people in because it was unusable because they lost the database and the update.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all kinds of issues with software base. So my concern is more, so I get into cloud, am I charging enough? Am I charging too much?
Right.
Those are the things that I worry about more is the market going to change? Because I've seen other competitors from other brands say, oh, we have cloud solutions too. Mm-hmm. And some of them are a fraction of the cost of what I would charge for my monthly fee on cloud service. And I go, am I going to be able to stay competitive in that arena as cloud emerges? And then,
right.
But
the word gets abused. I think the word cloud seriously gets abused and has different meanings to different people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we found when we looked into those other cloud systems, is most of them were not truly a cloud-based system.
Now, your controllers have a local cache, so if you lose your internet connection to the cloud, they have stored badges so that people can still operate the cloud.
The platform continues to work if you lose internet.
So 100% uptime on the internet connection isn't as critical as it might be in some other arena.
That's correct. Yeah. I think so. I had the opportunity to give a similar presentation in California, and one of our competitors asked me. They said, "Hey, can we come and sit in your presentation?" And they're the other cloud platform in the industry. Ends with Revo. And he asked me, and I'm like, yeah, sure. Come on in. So he was just interested. They've kind of had their eyes on what's going on. And we had a lot of this conversation of, how do you filter out the noise? Because there is a lot of noise in the industry when it comes to cloud. What's really cloud? What's not? What's maybe on-prem with a cloud, functionality and those types of things. And I think that you'll see us trying to drive in that direction more to help to help filter out some of that noise. And we'll work with them in some cases to help do that. But yeah, there's a lot of noise, and that's the concern, just like Myron had brought up, is how much do I charge? How long can I stay competitive in a market like this when everybody's trying to drive to the cloud as fast as possible? And so what I mean about our costs and understanding our cost is just like this story. What's the value proposition to the gal who owns the workout facility? Well, the value proposition is 5 times or more less expensive overall cost of ownership of a cloud-based platform in this instance, right? Where she would have invested $5,000, maybe she was investing $1,000 over this period of time in cloud costs.
It's a type of risk analysis.
That's right, absolutely. So once you kind of understand that and understand that people have gone through that, and all of you guys have installed on-prem solutions or solutions that had to have updates and those types of things, you start looking at what those costs were associated with doing those updates. Now it's very easy to do an analysis and determine that there's a value proposition financially alone. So when you're not even taking into consideration your the value proposition of connecting anywhere, anytime on any device, or being able to provide remote support and those types of things. So that's what I mean by managing the cost, and then understanding what your labor is and what types of what you're going to need to charge as you move monthly to if you're going to be subsidizing some of those initial labor costs, or if you're going to do just a basic installation like you might typically do and then charge a reoccurring monthly. Are you going to choose to do a monthly reoccurring revenue, or are you going to turn around and charge yearly? And we see that on both sides of the fence. So we've seen that some people are very, very successful with just saying, hey, look, there's a monthly fee to this, and here's the value proposition of the monthly fee. Boom, you run into it. It's not a big deal. And we see others that say, hey, you know what, I really prefer to just wrap this into a maintenance agreement. They have their typical maintenance agreement that they've got put together, and they're wrapping the fees into that. So it's just a yearly piece. And that's why we felt charging yearly was more advantageous for you guys, and then giving you guys the choice whether you charge monthly or yearly. So if you choose to charge yearly, you're not being charged monthly from us in that aspect. So just a quick little tidbit on Internet of Things. Okay, this is a big deal, and I thought these were great statistics. Connected devices in 2015, 15.4 billion connected devices in 2015. That's a pretty big number, right? And 38% of those devices were in the B2B space. So that's still fairly significant when you talk about numbers of devices. And we can see that because we saw the automated home, right? And everybody got excited about this fully automated home, my thermostat, my TV, and they're still excited. But there was this huge dichotomy between my home and my commercial environment. Now I go to the office, it's all analog. Maybe I've got a network, but outside of that, I can't control it from my phone. I've got to go to a terminal and control everything. It's more cumbersome, more expensive, and harder to install in most cases. But the question is why? Because it's a building, no different than a home is a building of just a smaller size. So if you look at 2020, so we get another year down the road, they're forecasting that number is going to double at 30.7 billion connected devices, which is pretty impressive. Intel came out with their own statistics, and I don't know, I would assume that they have some clout to be able to do this at 200 billion devices by 2020. That's a pretty big jump. But 200 billion, we know that's a big number. So it's going to be by 2020 a $1.29 trillion market, just IoT devices. Well, we know that IoT devices brings a recurring piece to that in most cases. And then by 2025, the market states that that's going to over double again at 75.4 billion connected devices. And who knows what Intel forecasted for 2025, I don't know. But this, and again, we come back and we say, okay, well, we've got a monthly fee, and the overall cost of ownership, I don't know, is that going to be less expensive or not? Well, if you look at the city of Barcelona, they decided to do smart lighting throughout the entire city. Well, when they implemented a smart lighting technology throughout the entire city, they actually created 47,000 new jobs when they did that. When they created 47,000 new jobs, they also recognized a $37 million a year savings because of going to smart lighting. So that's big when you're talking about IoT devices, right?
It's like Chris's building, he saves $1,500 a month just in having lighting control modules that dim the lights 10% depending on the amount of light that's in the actual building itself.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
And a lot of it's economy of scale too, like, you can charge more for somebody for one door than you can for somebody that you're giving them 100 doors too, so.
So we won't really jump into market adoption much. I want to really have more of a conversation, but obviously business, government, consumer. I've already talked about school districts. We're seeing it all over the place. So don't be gun shy there in most applications. They've got money allocated in a lot of cases. If they don't have the money allocated, you know, they're applying for government grants in a lot of cases as well for that type of thing. So mobile devices, these are awesome statistics. We already know that the number is high, but 77% of Americans own a smartphone, right? So everybody's got one. Now we see that our 2-year-olds can control those things and do all that kind of stuff. We check those smartphones 8 billion times a day.
I only check mine 6 billion times a day.
So you make up for, you're below average. Yeah, 8 billion times a day. That's pretty significant. 53% of those individuals check them right before they go to bed. So I'm going to go to bed. Oh, okay, let's see what's going on. Okay, boom. Yeah.
I'll sleep with it on my face.
Yeah. It's just creating this bright red spot when you wake up in the morning. Was this somebody in here? Somebody I saw a few weeks ago, or no, this was about a year ago, came into the office and had a big old shiner. And they were checking it and just boom. Dropped it right on his eye. 46% of individuals check them right when they wake up. So get up, boom. That's the first thing you do is take it off. The one statistic that I don't have up here, but 17% of individuals that have a smartphone wake up in the middle of the night to check their smartphone. I don't know if using the restroom is tied to that, but they say that it's directly tied to the 17%. I mean, that's a problem. We have an epidemic here.
Yes.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. It screws with your head. There's a lot of statistics there. So if you look at like Nest and like I was talking about before, right, we came to this expectation of automation within our homes. And now we see in commercial environments that individuals, especially making these decisions, and we see this IT shift, right, of us communicating more to the IT departments on making some of these decisions, that they're making the shift to wanting to have smarter buildings. Deloy Hansen, in a couple of projects that he's got going right now, and the Real Academy that they just installed PDK in, he says, look, I want this the smartest building out there. And so a lot of what he was doing is trying to develop some of the smartest technology in there. And he's got another building going up out west. He said the same thing. He wants to make sure that from renewable energy, like the stadium has, to all of these other facets, that they're some of the smartest buildings out there. But it also recognizes a pretty substantial savings. One thing that I had chatted with Matt Reynoldsbacher about, one of the right-hand guys of Deloitte, does all his TI work. He had stopped by my house one day. He's a neighbor of mine, and I said, hey, look, we just released partitioning in the system, and so you can put in one system, one cloud node, and now you can partition it off for different owners within the building or different tenants. And he started going through it, and he's like, Jeff, he says, you don't understand this could equate to millions of dollars to the bottom line for us on our leases, because we can install an access control platform on the main building and now start delineating that out to all of the other tenants. And then obviously that becomes part of their tenant costs, right? Is how many doors do you have? How many do you want to control? If you want to add another door, no problem. We've got somebody that's going to come in and install that. So now it becomes a profit center for him, and as a dealer, when you're charging for that, you realize it's not that big of a deal, because he's going to start creating that as a revenue piece, which is big. So target markets, I'll just flip through these again. Multi-locations, doctor's office, restaurants. Those of you familiar with Neaters, they've got 78 locations, I want to say, throughout from here down through Texas, and so they're installing that in all of those properties. Education is a big one for us, multi-tenant office buildings. And then multi-tenant residential for us, because we've got some integrations into some multi-tenant residential management platforms. Now when they go and add a tenant, that information flows automatically to the Prodatakey platform. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute.
Quick question.
You bet.
These cards
Uh-huh.
are the numbers globally unique, and the significance of that is one badge can let me into any buildings that have a Prodatakey system and for which I'm authorized. So I don't need to have a whole bunch of badges for each building that I might go to.
Mhm.
One badge can let me into any of those buildings if I'm authorized to that building.
You bet. Yeah, and that number can be unique depending on how you set it, what type of reader you use, and those types of things. You bet. But yeah, and what sparked the conversation is when Matt drove up, I see on his truck floorboard he's got like 20 of these cards.
Yes.
I'm like, Matt, what are you doing?
One for each
I says, you realize you can program this one card into all of your buildings, you'd be set. So anyway, I haven't followed up with them on that, but that was interesting. But yeah, we talked about CapEx versus OpEx cost. You know, so that's going to make a big difference to some versus others.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Please.
How old is Matt?
What's that?
Can I ask a follow-up? How old is Matt?
How old is Matt? How old is Matt? I don't
put
know.
him in his upper 40s.
40?
50s.
Yeah.
He was there, oh, unless you weren't here earlier, he was here in the morning class.
Yeah. Yeah, Matt's just a great guy. So let's talk about the value proposition from a platform perspective solely. Okay, so we're not going to get into price right now. We'll talk about cost here in just a minute. But overall lower cost of ownership, we dug into that a little bit, right? As you put in a platform like this, you don't have those updates that come out that you're paying for, additional hardware that you've got to upgrade. Everything on our boards can be updated all the way from the firmware back up into the cloud itself. So as you install a system, or maybe you stop by distribution, pick up a door controller, realize it's been on the shelf for 3 or 4 months on accident, then you can put that thing in. It's going to recognize what version of firmware it's on and will automatically upload to the latest firmware. So that's something that gives you peace of mind, and again, should be something on your single page slick to your customer saying, hey, this is my value proposition to you. You know, you're going to have hardware that's not going to go out of date as long as you're, you know, working with us in this reoccurring piece, right? Scalable. It's one of the most scalable platforms in there. You want to add another door, throw another door in. There are some other things on more of an enterprise side that we're working on our roadmap that scalability goes up from there. But even today, we've got several schools that have many locations, and they're logging into those, you know, just from the app or the browser. They're logging in and they can see all those locations and make changes from one interface.
This doesn't really apply to this conversation, but I have a question about
Please.
the cybersecurity. Do you guys have
Yeah.
any metrics or have any like talking points that we can have for the cybersecurity of the platform itself?
Yeah. So.
I was going to.
Yeah. So cybersecurity is a big one, right? And in the roundtable, we talked a little bit about some of the security pieces. But for us, security was number one. We built this platform in essentially 3 layers. The first layer being the security infrastructure, which most of the time as a development company you come into, not always, but sometimes you come into it and you say, okay, we're going to develop this product. So you put the product together, and security sometimes is a last piece of that. It's like, okay, now I need to make it secure. So now we're going back and doing that. So for us, security was number one. Full two-factor authentication on the platform side. It makes you re-authenticate every 30 days or on a new device that you log into. Every head-end unit that you plug in is a full outbound connection. Once it makes that outbound connection and authenticates with the certificate in the cloud, it opens up a 2-way SSL communication back to our servers in the cloud, allowing you to control that. So, and then we've also instituted hardware token IDs on every piece of the hardware that we continue to institute greater security from a hardware perspective as well. So let's say somebody for some crazy reason wants to try to take something down on the PDK platform. You know, maybe they could compromise a platform or a door, but you could not, compromise the platform as a whole. We mitigate, like man-in-the-middle attacks and those types of things using like Diffie-Hellman key exchanges. But we've got a full security document. It's about 20 pages long. If you're IT savvy, you can read through this and understand it. If you're not, like myself, sit in the room with Josh for a couple of hours, right, and have him tell you, and once you walk out of there. There's been several people that have called in and said, hey, look, from a security perspective, this probably isn't going to be a best fit for my customer. And we've got Josh on the phone with them, and actually one of the dealers that sat on the roundtable said that this morning. He says, I just got him on the phone with Josh for about an hour, our CTO. And after that, they were like, okay, let's go. And they pulled the trigger. And this is a pretty substantial system that's installed down in St. George. So from a security perspective, I would like to say that we are one of the most secure platforms in the industry. We spend a lot of time on it. And there's not another system that I'm aware of today that has full two-factor authentication from a user level.
Just to follow up, is that a document that's available for us to download?
You bet. Yep, absolutely. And Josh can send that over to you as well. He's got it readily available right there. So yeah, I would start by reading through that. I'm not a real tech savvy guy, so I just have to sit down with Josh. But if you guys ever want to, we can set that up. As you saw from the networking class, he can get pretty technical in some aspects. But at the end of it, if you give him enough time at the end of it, you're really going to understand some cool stuff. He does a good job. But that was the basis behind the entire platform for us. And then on top of that security layer, we built our API. And the API, anybody in here by raise of hands use an API at all? You guys use APIs? Anybody else? Do you know what an API is? Anybody?
Application Programming Interface. It
That's
allows
right.
your program to talk to his program.
That's right. So essentially, we created a full API, this programming interface that allows anybody else's platform to just talk to our system or pull and push data. Well, what's unique about this is because our security layer was number one and our number two layer was our API, what sits on top of our API and was the third layer of this is our UI, or our user experience. So when I log in from my phone on PDK.io, you're actually using our own API to control the platform through our security layer. What's unique about that is what can you do from your phone? Everything. So what can you do from the API? Virtually everything, yeah. So you can get in there and change door configurations, add, delete cards, people, groups, all of that kind of stuff. So we've really felt like we've done a good job on the integration side, allowing integrators, integration companies, like you saw here with Assa Abloy, they're a Perio lock set. We're one of, I think, 3 now companies tied into their 16-to-1 hub. Is it 3? Maybe 4? I don't know, something like that. Yeah, but we just did a 480 door application in Florida that was all Apereo lock sets outside of the entry doors. Well, all they did was they just put the hubs in throughout the building. They brought in an Assa guy. The Assa rep went in and built out the full wireless map for them, which they do and they recommend. You do need to get certified. But once you're certified on that, they'll come out, they'll walk the job with you, and then they'll help you map the entire platform out. Once that's done, they put in the hubs, and those hubs connect directly to our cloud interface. Once it's connected to our cloud interface and you start installing wireless lock sets, they're all battery powered, and you're talking a 3-year battery life on their newer lock sets. So that's pretty awesome. And we can pop those doors open remotely. We can do it all real time. We can manage we can see transparently what the state of the door is, et cetera, all from the platform. Well, they're just tied directly in through our API. So you could go into our system and manage all of those lock sets, and they look just like door controllers. So it's pretty unique. And we're monitoring all the battery on that as well. And in one of the next releases, you'll see we've actually got it all done. We showed it off at ISC, is the battery monitoring on every single one of the doors. So we do that also with the Aperio lock sets. You put an Aperio lock set, we can tell you where the battery level is or if the batteries need to be replaced in that lock set. Being more proactive, right? You get a notification, you come out, replace 4 AA batteries, and you're back up and running. So, and you're replacing them before it needs replaced. So that's a big deal, and that's what our API buys us. But coming back to the security portion of this, every API call, every call through the user interface, the UI, is all done through our security layer. So when we deliver the API to another manufacturer that wants to integrate into our platform, that's done through our security layer. They have to have access to that. So we give them authentication credentials. They use the 2-factor authentication and they log in that way. Yeah, you bet. It allows us to innovate faster, right? Because we can make a change, we can push it out to the platform, see how that change affects the industry, and we can continue to innovate on the platform. So we're not having to say, hey, go to our site, download a file, go on site, or even through the network and plug something in and do an update to the panel. All of these things are happening real time. Again, a value proposition to your customer would be real-time updates to the platform. So hey, if a new feature comes out like partitioning did, all of a sudden, I had dealers call me personally and say, hey, I see this new icon on there that says partitioning. Oh yeah, now you can partition your system. You click on it. They inherently started receiving those types of features because of that. 2-factor authentication from a card level, PIN plus card, was something that we didn't offer a year ago, and about 8 months ago or so we released that, and now it's just inherently in there and available. Strength and security, we talked about security. Latest technology. For us, because we built this from the ground up as a cloud-based platform, we didn't take an on-prem solution and try to push it to the cloud, which is where we see a lot of the industry going, right? I own Brand X. I'm like, man, everybody's going to the cloud. I need to get to the cloud as soon as possible. Well, for most companies, that's very, very difficult because their overhead is already millions of dollars a year. So for me to go and do a complete new rev of my platform is so cost prohibitive. So what I'm typically doing is getting my developers and I'm saying, hey, look, what can we do to patch this thing and make it cloud capable, or at least some functionality from the cloud? So what we've done is we built the entire I/O platform as cloud platform from the ground up. So every piece of code and the technology that we use to write code. Josh came to me the other day, our CTO, and he said, man, it's interesting. He says, I'm doing some research. He says, and I'm finding that a lot of the code that we've been using, they're making some small tweaks to it, and it's just like a laptop that you bought, right? It's starting to, they're starting to change some of the technology in there. So for us, it's about how do you continue to evolve that, and the platform, the way we have it set up, allows for that. Proactive support, I've talked about it many times. How can you be notified before your customer is aware of an issue? And so we're constantly working on ability and ways for you to get notified before your customer that there might be an issue with power or something like that. Staying up to date. I talked about features and those types of things, but not just from features, but the hardware perspective. And then greater integration. And so let's talk about integration. We're not integrated into all of these, but if you look at somebody like ASSA ABLOY, Savants, and the other partners that were down there, as well as some of these others. If you look at Dwello is a multi-tenant residential application, and what they're doing is they're creating smart apartments. And so they'll go into an apartment infrastructure, and they'll essentially sell the owner or the manager on creating their apartments to be smart apartments. Well, what does that do for the apartment owner? Increases their revenue, right? Monthly revenue on an apartment. So what they're doing is they're going in, changing the thermostat, the locking hardware, all of these devices to create what you would have as a smart home, as a smart apartment. And now they can charge more for these apartments because they're smart enabled. But they've also built the entire software infrastructure behind this, which allows now for them to manage that from not only a costing perspective, but also from an integration. So what they've done, if you look at somebody like Dwello, SmartCare, Easy Storage, SiteLink. All of these companies are directly integrated into the Prodatakey's platform as an exclusive provider of the perimeter access solution. So when Easy Storage goes out and sells a system, they're actually bolting on Prodatakey directly to the Easy Storage platform. I don't pay my storage fees. It goes in automatically through the API and disables somebody's profile. It doesn't delete it unless you delete them and say, hey, they're no longer a customer. It just goes in and disables it. And then I can go from my, they're working on right now where it can send them a text and say, hey, you hadn't paid your bill, that's why you can't get in. And it's in a text, do you want to pay it now? Yes, I do. So then it goes in and re-enables their account. That's the type of thing that a real API allows you to do. SmartCare, which is a like a daycare service. What they do is they have a software that manages daycare. So when I come up, recognizes that I'm the parent, matches the parent to the child, and allows you to actually pick up your child. And so what they're doing is they're utilizing the PDK platform on all entry and exit doors. Well, they've got about 1,000 applications that are being installed right now for a SmartCare infrastructure where they'll have PDK as the management behind that platform. So that's the power of the API. As you get into some of your customers, and again, it's very difficult for us to say, hey, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And I love that dialogue. That becomes very difficult. But then when you start to say, hey, look, I've got a 50-door application. If we've got this functionality, we might be able to secure this job. Now we're talking about project-based development. And if you guys saw our roadmap, it's booked out for about 2 years. And so just catching up on that is very difficult. But we can inject that where it makes sense in the roadmap to try to help out there. So anyway, integrations are everything for us. If you look at one thing that we're working on is an integration into Workday. Is anybody familiar with Workday?
It works with the HR departments and allows time management, employee punches, vacation management, payroll, and benefits.
That's right. Yep. So you've got essentially a full HR platform. I hire somebody, I hire them at a specific level. And then it can automatically grant or deny access based on what your level is within an HR. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great platform. But in most of these cases with SmartCare, Workday, Dwello, and I think Easy Storage, they're actually not even utilizing PDK.io. They may go in and do the initial configuration, but outside of that, it's all done through their app, which is really nice for them. Okay, so let's talk about industry and end user costs. And again, I don't expect you to share numbers. You're welcome to if you want to have a discussion around this. But hosted services, we've seen anywhere from $9 to $30 per door per month is what we're seeing. We're seeing a medium of maybe 12 to 15 is what we see a lot of, but it really ranges depending on the part of the industry that you're in. And then managed services can be anywhere typically from $15 to $50 per month. And again, that's all going to depend on what value proposition am I providing to the customer. You may wrap in warranty with that. You may wrap in some other things with that as well. If you're doing that, obviously you can increase your recurring cost to that as well, which is really nice. And then cost to the integrator, it really varies by manufacturer. You guys all know that our costs for a non-certified integrator, you are $6 per door per month. And that's how it sits. As a certified integrator, that cost is tiered and can go all the way down to 70 cents per door per month, depending on the size of the application. That's pretty advantageous. I can't think of any of our competitors out there from a manufacturer standpoint that can compete with that, again, because of the overhead that they have in their existing development. So our goal from a Prodatakey perspective is to make it cost effective for you, not only from a hardware, but also from the reoccurring piece. What makes sense for us to cover our nut? Obviously, I've got a mortgage to pay, right? All of us do, and we can't work for free. But at the end of the day, if we can make it cost effective for you, it really gives you the ability to drive that business the way that makes the most sense for that particular customer. So keep that in mind. What discussion do you guys want to have around this? Anybody have?
What does it take to get that certification?
It's about a 5-hour class.
In person or online?
It can be both. We don't have a standalone online training. You would either come to our office if you're here locally, or you take it online through a web conference that we do.
Because I'm up in Logan, which is not that far away.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a drive.
Yeah. Little drive.
Cost?
Yeah. For the certification, $450. And the certification, it comes with a dealer kit. Somebody won a dealer kit today. That dealer kit has some swag in it, but it's got a cloud note. It's essentially a full one-door system. As we go through the training, we want to make sure you've got hardware there, and the cost of the goodies in there, I think, is like $660. So $450 gets you certified, gets you some hardware, so you can go through the training with us while we wire up equipment at the door, which is nice. It is a one-day training. Yeah. Yeah. It increases your warranty and those types of things as well. Also, and we just opened up, for those of you that are certified and don't know, we do have a 24-hour, 24/7 support line now, which is really nice. So you can call that. You get a live person every single time, but that then it's an answering service that takes care of those after hours, and then they get one of our techs on the line and connect you with them live.
That includes lunch?
It does. It does include lunch. Yeah. Yeah. What other questions do you guys have around cost? Do you guys have any questions or even comments around how you're charging customers, thoughts around that?
Are you putting them in like a year contract, a 3-year contract? How are you going about with that?
I would suggest doing that, absolutely. And again, tying it to the value proposition just from a Prodatakey perspective, but you may have other value propositions that you offer. When you're looking at doing a maintenance agreement, right, that might tier out based on the hardware that you install. And so when I had maintenance agreements, I always used a calculation of 10% of my initial install. I've been out of the industry so long, I don't even know if that's even relevant anymore. But if I did a $20,000 install, I would charge them $2,000 a year. That was my maintenance agreement, and that covered warranty purposes and other things as well. And in this case, you wrap your cloud hosting piece into that as well. And then you can bump that a bit. Yeah, and obviously areas like schools, education facilities, they may have somebody on site that can help maintain some of that equipment, but for the most part, they appreciate having somebody that they can call and help work with that.
I'd just be curious to know, not dollar-wise, but what is everybody willing to invest or subsidize if any? Like for us, on a single door, we're willing to go like 6 months, so that's the cost of the controller, whatever the locking hardware is, and our estimated labor versus what we charge. We're willing to say we're gonna not make anything, but after 6 months, we're making money on the RMR. By 3 to 4 doors, we're at like 4 months. I don't have no idea if that's acceptable or if people are getting full boat, like a traditional access system, if they're getting.
Is there anybody else that's subsidizing?
5 to 6 month ROI.
Okay. Yeah.
Jeff, I found that it depends on what market I was playing in.
Yeah, right.
So
Good
depending on
point.
the types of customers you deal with, for some people, the CapEx expense is a big deal. And so that's where subsidizing plays a big part. But there's some realms that you deal in where the CapEx is expected and they want to keep the RMR as low as they can. And so they don't want the subsidies. They'd rather pay the money up front and have the lower monthly. So it really depends on, you got to look at your customer or your customer base, the type of companies or customers that you deal with as to whether that's going to play a factor.
Yeah.
So, and who you're competing against. Now, it's a little hard to share in this environment where most of us are local competitors.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's
I'm
it's
out of
always
state,
a little,
so
closer you keep your cards, but
Yeah.
that's, I think, the general thing when it comes to subsidizing when I look at it. 'Cause I have subsidized some where it mattered to the customer, but then I'd had that subsidy out in almost every proposal. I'd say, hey, if you want us to subsidize it, we'll do it at this. And some people I didn't even bother just because I know they'll thumb their nose at it. They don't care about that. They have a budget, and I get my full markup on the upfront install.
And you may have these smaller jobs, like 1 to 4 doors, right, that you're talking about. Prodatakey is actually rolling out a program that will be for specific dealers. It'll be $99 to install and $99 a month, and will finance the hardware side of it. So we're not, again, it's not going to be necessarily a widespread program, but it gives you the ability to say, hey, somebody, from a CapEx cost, it doesn't make sense. But from an operating expense, I've got 3 doors, I'll pay $300 a month. And what we're doing from Prodatakey's perspective is we're financing all the hardware, but we're also financing the installation as well. So we come to you as or you come to us and say, hey, I've got a project and opportunity here, and we're going to pay you for the install. So you'll install the project, get it all set up, and then we'll be paying you roughly $10 a month per door that you have installed on top of that. So and then it's essentially what we're doing is we're just helping you finance it, because the finance model can be fairly difficult when you look at it from a revenue perspective. You start to build out that model and realize, oh my gosh, this is going to cost me $1.5 million in the next year to finance this thing. But the backside, there's a nice value to the backside. Or I can utilize Prodatakey to help finance the project as well. So we're not trying to move anybody necessarily from just the straight recurring revenue piece. But if you've got a customer that says, hey, look, access control really doesn't work for me because I don't have the $3,000-$4,000 a door to have this thing installed. Great. Well, how about $99 down and $100 a month per door? And they may say, oh yeah, I owned a building for a while where that's the service I was looking for, because I didn't have the capital expense to install access control, but I needed it for services that I was offering. So that can be an advantage as well. But I love the thought around financing, and like Myron said, it depends on the market, depends on the customer and the opportunity. In most cases.
Yeah, you could be at one job and somebody's willing to pay $100,000 and pay, $1,000 a month, but then you go to the next job that they don't want to pay a penny, but yet they still want all of those whistles. So you have to be able to give both people the same thing, but find out what they're able to come up with. It's just a lot of it's just time and effort.
Then obviously, that you'd want to tie a long-term agreement to something like that, right? And then tie the service to it as well. Well, we're really out of time. Anything else that you guys want to talk about real quick in the last minute?
Hey, Chad.
Yeah.
Quick, you guys are welcome to go back to the Audio Executive Club. Still doing some drinks there, mixed meal, whatever.
That's open till when? 4:30? 4 o'clock?
Envoy's still over there. Altronics is still over there, and Savants. They're happy to answer any questions you guys have, so feel free to go over there and talk to them. They said you're welcome to talk to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. We appreciate you coming. Yeah.